My name is Peter Matthews, and I am the co-artistic director of Boxcar Theater. And for this particular production, I am playing Romeo of Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet is actually a fascinating little piece. It originally started out as a response to Proposition 8, but then as we kind of progressed away from that as time passed, it became more of an expression of what is going on with civil rights in general, and Proposition 8 as being an expression of a lack of equality in American society. We kind of focused it more on the idea that there's nothing wrong with people of the same sex being in a relationship, so why is that something that the general public gets to decide that it's right or wrong? So this particular production is really focused on the relationship between Romeo and Juliet from the original, but Juliet has been cast as a man, Julian. And we've removed the Montague and Capulet kind of family feud because that didn't really resonate with a modern audience. And looking at what Shakespeare's original intention was, which was this idea that there's a forbidden love, and that forbidden love leads to tragedy and destruction, and what resonates to a modern audience. And the forbidden love that made the most sense was that between people of the same gender. So that's kind of where we went with this production. Well, with this particular production, Nick A. Oliveira, who adapted the script from the original Shakespeare, cut it down to 6 core characters. So clearly there's Romeo and Juliet, but then we've also got Capulet as sort of the parental oppressive figure for Julian, and then Mercutio as the foil for Romeo and his relationship, but also kind of representing a supportive character from a heterosexual perspective in this non-heterosexual experience. And then Tybalt, who represents the anger and the hatred and denial of a homosexual relationship. And then finally, the friar, who is the supportive character for Romeo, and the nurse, who is the supportive character for Julian, were combined into one character to create the Friar Lawrence nurse character that is actually really kind of a fascinating physical piece for the actor Diana Grog, who's playing both. And it's also interesting because she is the only female performer in the cast. Everyone else is a male. So it was condensed down to a much tighter core group of performers to communicate this core idea of oppressed, denial of love and kind of a modern context. I think my favorite moment, well, I don't know. Honestly, I feel like the balcony scene is actually really interesting, both from kind of a technical producer perspective of just in the way that it's been done for the company, but then also as an actor, it's really challenging because it's a scene that everyone is very familiar with on some level. I mean, everyone knows, but soft, what light, and wherefore art thou Romeo, and the kind of catchphrases from this particular script. And so it's interesting working as an actor in the show, trying to bring something new to that experience, aside from the script adjustments and things like that. But then also from a producer perspective, the way that it's actually been staged is really fascinating because it's really tied into this, the set design and just the overall concept of the show, where it's the only moment where Romeo and Juliet are actually physically separated by through space and by the set and by the lighting and everything. And it's really the moment that they're most connected, and yet they're most separate as well. So I find that actually to be a really fun part to do in the show. The idea is that this webbing kind of gets in the way throughout the entire show. And I mean, the idea is that there's so many obstacles to being in a same-sex relationship, and the set really personifies is not quite the right word, but it exemplifies that. And the set piece that I'm holding right now is one of those wires that we have to fight against and we have to work around as part of the overall concept for the show. And I think that it really nicely ties it all together. And it's very minimal as well, because the show really is focusing on the core story between these two characters. And the set, as you can see, is very monochromatic, and the costumes are very vibrant and the characters are very vibrant. And so bringing those to life against this very single kind of color scheme set is very challenging and fun at the same time. So it's been a great experience. I think what Wolfgang Wakalowski and we were the co-directors for this particular project, and I think what we were really hoping for is this sense that the audience would walk away with an idea that Romeo and Juliet in the 16th century is no different than Romeo and Juliet in the 21st century. It really is about a relationship that's not acceptable to society at large, though there's a portion of society that does embrace it. And ultimately what we want is the audience to walk away realizing that as tragic and kitschy as the original Romeo and Juliet may seem to a modern audience, in that, you know, the Montagues and the Capulets and, you know, it's the Hatfields and the McCoys and these things that we kind of romanticize in a weird way, these are happening today to a real group of people. These are really happening to a subsection of our society that a lot of the US don't acknowledge and don't want to recognize as a real group of people in a way. And so wanting them to walk out saying, you know what, I voted no on Prop 8, but now but I don't have any friends that were affected by Proposition 8 passing, but now I have a better sense of what it actually means for people. And while Proposition 8 is, you know, it's been a year, ultimately, I mean, myself personally, as a homosexual man, Proposition 8 has affected my life in a really horrible way. And I want people to know that I'm just like you. I mean, whether or not I'm in love with this person or that person, it makes a difference. And your vote made a difference. And I think that a lot of people don't necessarily have that recognition. So that's what we were going for.